And I'm going, thank you. First, we have the welcome. Then it's going to Sylvia and Ellen. They are going to talk a little bit more about Human Rights Council. And Margaret and Sanju are going to tell us what was their experience regarding asking for the ECOSOC status. And then we are going to have some time for questions. So I'm going to put everything in the chat box. And first of all, I'm going to give the floor to Sylvia. Sylvia is has been working with international organizations in the fields of human rights, aging, and health for 25 years. In Geneva, Sylvia represents the International Network for Prevention of Older Abuse and the International Legitimacy Center for Global Alliance, advocating for the adequate inclusion of older persons at the Human Rights Council and the UN, and promoting a UN Convention on the Rights of Older Persons. So, Sylvia, you have the floor. So,
thank you, Belen, and thank you all for being here. This is going to be a conversation, but bear with me. I'm going to share my screen, and I just put some slides in order to guide me, and then that we can keep them as points. So I will share the screen. I will I am going to speak. Yes, now you can see that, right? Good.
yes,
I'm going to talk about our participation at the UN. I focus particularly in Geneva and the Human Rights Council because this is where I'm mostly at. And I have lived in Geneva for 25 years. And so that's I bringing my experience and the knowledge I gathered as I went through those years. And this is important what I'm saying, because even though we have a lot of information that we bring, really is by doing that we actually get the experience and to learn how to work with the UN, which is in itself complicated. So we are focusing today on the issue of accreditation and getting ECOSOC status. ECOSOC is the Economic and Social Council of the UN that also has the role of coordinating the work across the UN for many issues, including the accreditation of NGOs to work with the UN. What does it mean? Each space within the UN, each organization has different levels of access and rules for attending meetings, deliver statements, organize events, or simply observe. To get access to the UN, an organization will usually obtain either a short-term accreditation for a specific UN conference, sometimes, for example, the UN economic commissions. You don't have to necessarily to be accredited. You can ask a particular a special accreditation for that meeting, and so you get the badge for that meeting. It's a short-term accreditation for a specific event, or you can get the Economic and Social Council, the ECOSOC accreditation called consultative status, which provides for a more permanent relationship with the UN and grants higher level of privileges. So without ECOSOC status, NGOs are confined to the sidelines, are unable to submit questions or attend UN sessions or hold side events in their own name. The Committee of NGOs is a committee of member states that they meet twice a year, and they review the applications by NGOs, and they recommend to the ECOSOC chamber. So they meet twice a year in January and May, review all the applications, and they recommend to the ECOSOC Council whether to accept or to defer or to clarify, ask questions to clarify, and they meet in May and June, in January and May, and the Council, the ECOSOC, they meet in June and July. many NGOs, I have to mention this because many NGOs get the fair and get rejected a few times, or they get, you know, too many questions for clarification. And often these are issues of political tactics by some member states, that they would rather deny the access to NGOs who happen to be critical to those governments. In that sense, I think that we generally don't have many problems, that our organizations deal with a topic that is less controversial in many cases. So I think that we have, I don't know many, there have been a few at the open-ended working group, that there have been discussions and member states who didn't want to accept a few, but in the end, they do get in. Why? Why do we want this ECOSOC status? That to increase our credibility with our government, that means that we have gone through some kind of monitoring or assessment by member states. So it gives a little bit of higher status with your government and open up no, somebody is with a, okay, there was a noise, sorry. Open up advocacy opportunities across the different UN processes, enables NGOs, sorry for the typo, to participate in person and or virtually in different UN processes relevant to older people, including the Human Rights Council, which I will go a little bit deeper in a minute, and to ensure that your NGOs are on the list for consultations and communications regarding the UN-related developments. That means that once you are in the roster or in the database, you get emails with information, and you don't have to wait for Ellen to send that. She does very well, but she doesn't send you everything. And so being in the database means that we get the information from the NGO liaison offices. Even may open different opportunities for funding to travel to UN events or UN meetings. The application process takes time, takes about a couple of years. Can be political, as I said, but it is really worth the effort. So, but who is eligible? It's not anybody or everybody. So you can have relationships, can be given to international, regional, sub-regional, or national NGOs, or non-profit organizations, or public, even public bodies that are non-governmental. Must demonstrate that their work has direct relevance to the aims and purposes of the UN, and must have in official existence. It must be in official existence. That means officially registered somewhere in the country for at least 2 years. Establish a headquarters, democratically adopted constitution, authority to speak for its members, representative structures, mechanisms of accountability, and democratic and transparent decision-making processes. So that you have to demonstrate that you are a serious organization in order to be able to get the consultative status. And if you are a member of a global organization that already is, that you are a national affiliate, for example, you also have to demonstrate that the work that you do nationally in itself is relevant to the UN in order to justify that your national affiliate can also get the status. And we have one example as such that Margaret will tell us later. Sorry. And that there are 3 categories of status. General, that are for big and really global organizations. Special, for more specific organizations that deal with specific topics, or, for example, organizations that only deal with aging, but that don't deal with other issues that the UN works on, will probably get a special consultative status rather than the general. And the roster is for more limited participation. So at the UN, at the Human Rights Council, only NGOs with consultative status. So I have things that are block my view. Only NGOs with consultative status can be accredited to participate at the sessions of the Human Rights Council as observers. This is what we are called observers. The member states that are member states who are the members of the council are the 47 members that are elected, and also there are member states who are not part of those 47 are observers, like NGOs and national human rights institutions who are also observers. But as observers, NGOs can attend and observe all proceedings of the council except for deliberations under complaints procedures, submit written statements to the council, make oral interventions, participate in debates, interactive dialogues, panel discussions, and informal meetings, including informal negotiations on resolutions with the member states, and organize parallel or side events on issues relevant to the work of the council. This is the Palais des Nations, the UN in Geneva, and the two pictures at the bottom is the council room, which is the room number 20 in the Palais des Nations in Geneva. It's a very special room. I hope that you can go and see it if you haven't done it. Just shortly to show a slide that I have shown many times, and you probably have seen it, but these are the human rights mechanisms that are the treaty bodies, where are all the committees of the conventions that have been adopted. Then at the center, the Human Rights Council, that with the mechanisms that report directly to the council, like the UP, the Universal Periodic Review, and the special procedures that are all the special rapporteurs and the independent experts and working groups. And we are going today concentrate only on the Human Rights Council. And why? Because the Human Rights Council is really the center, is the widest, where everybody participates, where there are many topics, every topic is discussed. There are 10 items of discussion at every session of the council. And even the treaty bodies, there are topics from the treaty bodies that are also reported to the council. So the council is really the most central mechanism of human rights where everybody participates. And here you can see that 47 member states that they rotate every 2 years on a rotating basis. They are the member states are elected at the General Assembly in New York, and as I said, from the council, they are also the processes of the Universal Periodic Review, where every government reports every 4 to 5 years about their implementation of human rights, the special procedures, the independent experts and special procedures. There is an advisory committee that advises the council. The council can request the advisory committee to think, to in-depth, to analyze a specific topic and bring recommendations to the council. In fact, in 2009, the advisory committee discussed the rights of older persons and recommended to the council that they should deal more. And that was the beginning of the process of working more on the rights of older persons. In a minute, I will come back to that. And there, as I said, there is a complaint procedure. So everything can happen there. But what we are interested, and I want to say what are the developments that have been on older persons. I mentioned the advisory committee in 2009. Then there was in 2012 a special meeting proposed by Argentina, but it was an expert meeting. And following that expert meeting that recommended more focus on older persons, in 2013, there was the first mandate of the independent expert that was established by Human Rights Council Resolution 2420. And that was the first time that we have, and was established in 2013. And since then, that resolution it has been renewed, or the mandate, more correctly, has been renewed in 2016, 2019, and 2022. That means the mandates of any special procedure are only for 3 years. They can be renewed for the other 3 years, and after 6 years, a new person can fulfill the mandate. The mandate itself can be renewed by a new resolution, but the person, one person can be only for two mandates, 3 years, 2 periods of 3 years. So no more than 6 years. That resolution was really the beginning of the independent expert that brought a lot of visibility to older persons. Then in 21 and the last 2 years, we have seen much more development. That was a resolution in 2021 on ageism and age discrimination that really operationalizes a report by the independent expert on ageism. And that resolution brings the language. It's the first time that ageism came into the language of the Council, and the language of any human rights body. So we can now quote ageism officially, which we couldn't do before, and can be recognized officially as a human rights term. And that resolution called for a report on normative standards that came out in February 22, and then a multi-stakeholder meeting that discussed the report on normative standards that took place in August 22, then a report of that and recommendations from the multi-stakeholder meeting was presented in March 2023. Came out in January 2023, that it was presented to the Council, or the report was not presented in person. The actual report was submitted to the Council in March 2023. And the last resolution was last October 2023 as well. And it was a resolution, again, operationalizing a report by the independent expert on violence, abuse, and neglect. And that resolution has asked for an expert group of discussing what are the legal obligations of member states regarding violence, abuse, and neglect. That means shouldn't be another expert meeting on what is violence, but what are the legal obligations of member states regarding violence, abuse, and neglect. There is a date, 3rd of May, and I know as of this week, the date stands. However, there is still not sure that there is money, that there is the liquidity of the UN has liquidity issues, so we don't know whether it will happen. But mark your calendars for the 3rd of May for this expert meeting on violence, abuse, and neglect of older persons. So how do we participate? How do we get more involved? I recommend a tool which is yourhrc.org. It's an organization by Universal Rights Group that has an interactive where that you can learn more about your country and the history of who are the member states, how the member states vote, how the member states express themselves, and it's very easy to use. Because my recommendation always is follow your country. The best way to learn how to work with a council, or the first step is to learn what does your members, your government say, or what does your government doesn't say, or how you convince your government to say what you want them to say, or what we need them to say. For example, there is an analysis of the state organization, or how the states interact in the different special procedures, dialogues at the council. And I can tell you that the older persons, it's one of the, if not the most, at the last session in October, September, October is the session where the independent expert on the rights of older persons presents her report of country visits and thematic reports. And there is an interactive dialogue with member states and observers. And the session on the rights of older persons is the most attended or the largest number of member states that take part in that. I think it tells us that there is interest in the topic and that we have space to increase the work at the council because there is interest by member states. The last session, there were about 75 member states that registered to speak at that session. You can see also, for example, Argentina, how many times there were members of the council. You can also go to the website of the OHCHR and look at your country and look at everything that all the reports that they have submitted for every process, whether it is the council, whether it is a universal periodic review, whether it is all the committees. So look, here you can see, you go to the OHCHR website and you can see, go to a country or territory, look for your country, and you get a lot of information. You can find all information about the council online. Everything is public. Everything is public. And there are several entry points. One is simply ohchr.org. You go to the mechanisms, Human Rights Council, and here you look for the regular sessions, and now it's going on. It started last week, the 55th session, and you can see that you have all the documentation. You have all the documentation, including the program of work, including the reports, all the reports, including everything. But also, you can print or you can look at the program of work. It is complicated. It looks like that, and it has 2 pages this time because it's longer than usual. And you can see that all the items. And generally, I mentioned that there are 10 items that there are, and we older persons are always under item 3, which is promotion and protection of human rights. So generally, we are rather at the beginning. The item 1 is only administrative issues. Item 2 is a report of the High Commissioner on country situations, and then item 3. So we are generally in the first or second week. But look, and that's why and then you will see the difference on the panels and general debates and in interactive dialogues with special procedures, but also you have the outcomes of the Universal Periodic Review or reports from several committees. And you can also go to this, and now also they have in the INDICO, which is the registration system of the UN, they also have a special section which is new, where you can also find all the documents and services of the council, and it's now online in all the 6 official languages. And you have the SCED, which is the schedule, which is very easy. You can have it online, or you can have it in your an application that you can download, and you can choose the session that you want to see, and you can create your own calendar. And I made an example is, for example, this including the informal consultations on resolutions, where we can participate. And how do we participate? First of all, we see in the calendar when they are. But if you click, it gives you the information on who the co-sponsors, who the main sponsors of the resolution are, who organize that the negotiations. And here they even give you the email of the person in the mission, so you can write to that person, request a copy of the draft resolution, and to be included in the list of distribution list for the new drafts. So, and you can ask for the link to participate online. The negotiations on this session is the last item where we can still participate online. But please look at it because it's a way to also get the emails of the direct person in the missions in charge of specific items. Or of course, you can watch it online on webtv.un. This is from this morning. The High Commissioner was giving his report. And I'm going to end here, and I'm giving you here a list of links with information where you can go into depth in all those links that I gave before. And just to finish, and as I said before, I wasn't born knowing these things. I really learned by being there, interacting with member states, listening to the language and how the member states interact. And slowly, I started getting confidence, and now I participate. And there, thank you very much for listening, and I'll be happy to respond. I'm sorry if I took too long.
Thank you, Sylvia. It's true that sometimes so much knowledge, it's difficult to summarize, but thank you so much for everything. And we're going to give you the links to everybody, so don't worry. We are going to give back to you when we are going to do the notes of the event. Now, Ellen is going to talk really shortly about an example of what you can do when you have ECOSOC status. That is why the delegation of GAROP went in the Human Rights Council, the session 54. So, Ellen, you have the floor.
Thanks, Belen. Thank you very much. And thanks, Sylvia, for such an informative and helpful overview. So as Belen explained, what I'm just going to do is take 2 or 3 minutes to give an example of some of our recent engagement in Geneva at the Human Rights Council, just to build on what Sylvia has shared. And if I can, I'll try to share a couple of photographs as well. So the Global Alliance, we continue to fundraise in order to support where we can the participation of older people and our members in relevant UN meetings. And last year, thanks to the availability of some project funding, we were able to support 3 of our members to participate in the first week of the Human Rights Council's 54th session in Geneva. And so if I can, I'll just share a photograph. I hope you can see the photo. So we had the members who participated with our support were Daniel Kotule of the South African Older Persons Forum, Bilkis Tahira of Shirakat Partnership for Development NGO in Pakistan, and Catherine Dumont of the Fundación de los Amigos Mayores in Mexico. And apologies for my bad Spanish pronunciation. Now, what was important is because these 3 NGOs from our network do not yet have their own ECOSOC accreditation, we had to register these members under the HelpAge International delegation. And we're very grateful to our colleagues at HelpAge for helping to facilitate this. But this meant that we only had 1 speaking slot between us all in the formal Human Rights Council session, which really kind of limited our speaking opportunities. So this is why it is so important that more NGOs can become ECOSOC accredited so that we can maximize our presence and our voice. So the aim of the trip was for us to build our capacity a bit more across our network and our membership, to engage in the Human Rights Council and to better understand how the UN in Geneva operates. And we wanted to show a strong civil society presence at that session because the core group of states led by Argentina was continuing to follow up with some dedicated work on older people's rights, as Sylvia outlined earlier. And so one of the things that we did, if I can, I'm not sure if you can see my screen if I... I will try to share another photo. Here. Thanks for your patience. So one of the things that we did was we attended a private meeting of the previous co-sponsors of the Human Rights Council's resolution on older people's rights before they started informal negotiations on that resolution that was open to all states. So we all had the opportunity to speak in this private meeting, and we reinforced our support there for a UN convention. And some of our members also made specific suggestions about the text of the resolution. So we heard afterwards from some of the states' representatives that we spoke to that they thought it was really important to see more NGOs in the room, and especially to see older people speaking up and contributing to the discussions. And it was really positive for us to see how NGOs have so much opportunity to contribute directly to these processes. And we also observed how state delegates participating had clear human rights expertise. So we attended the interactive dialogue in the main session with the UN independent expert as she presented her new report on violence, abuse and neglect. Some of our other members made oral statements during that meeting. And we also attended a side event hosted by the UN independent expert that was focused on that issue. And while in Geneva, our delegation also had some private meetings with the UN independent expert and some of our colleagues from the Office of the High Commissioner. So we also spent quite a bit of time over the week in the cafe called the Serpentine Bar, which is a large cafe space with lots of tables. And it's always very busy there during the day, and there's a lot of informal discussions and meetings that happen there. And it's just a really great way to pick up some intelligence and updates, and also to have an opportunity to present ourselves and our goals to the mission staff. So over the course of the week, our delegation talked to government representatives from many different government missions across different regions. And it was really helpful having our members present because they were able to connect with representatives from their own government's mission. And so overall, we had a really fruitful and productive week, and it was really good to see how involved NGOs can be in the work that happens at the Human Rights Council. So I think advocacy with states, especially Human Rights Council member states, is going to be really important for us in the coming months for our shared goal of achieving a UN convention. And so the more NGOs that are campaigning for older people's rights that can become ECOSOC accredited, the better, so that we can enhance our collective engagement there. So I'll end there. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ellen. And now I'm going to give the floor to our next two speakers, Margaret Gillis and Anju. First, I'm going to give the floor to Margaret, and I'm going to introduce really briefly to her. Both of them are going to talk us of how was the procedure of asking the ECOSOC status and what barriers and what good things they find in the way. So regarding this, Margaret is the founding president of International Longevity Center Canada, a human rights-based organization, and co-president of the International Longevity Center Global Alliance, which is an alliance of 16 centers around the world dedicated to the needs of older people. Also, she has a strong credential regarding human rights, working with and speaking at the UN General Assembly on behalf of older people. Margaret has been actively working for a United Nations Convention on the Rights of Older Persons in Canada and internationally. So, Margaret, I'm going to give you the floor. Thank you so much.
Thank you for this opportunity to discuss the process at the United Nations for UN ECOSOC status. My organization, the International Longevity Centre Canada, applied for ECOSOC status in May 2020. Now, I had already had some exposure to the positive impacts of having ECOSOC status, as our mothership, the International Longevity Centre Global Alliance, has had ECOSOC status for some time, and I had used it to attend meetings outside of the UN Open-Ended Working Group on Aging, which is the main meeting on aging held in New York each year. Now, I wanted to ensure that International Longevity Centre Canada had full access to the UN, and I was particularly interested in having a presence at the UN Human Rights Council, and Sylvia has given us a lot of information on why that's an important meeting. In our case, our organization is a human rights-based organization, and it seemed natural that we would want to attend and participate in UN Human Rights Council meetings. Now, our experience at getting UN ECOSOC status was mostly easy, although it did take 2 years, which is what I had been told it would take. So I want to encourage all of you to apply as soon as possible. Now, in 2020, we happened to have just a very talented summer student working in our office who worked on the original questionnaire for application for ECOSOC status. So I'm just going to share with you a little bit of information on what we submitted without going on too long. ILC Canada, as I mentioned, had been working at the UN, particularly at the Open-Ended Working Group on Aging, which is that meeting on older persons, since 2016. So we had a pretty strong story on the work we were doing at the international level. Now, being a member of GAROP and working for a proposed United Nations Convention on the Rights of Older Persons, it turned out to be a really important aspect as well. I referenced my work on the GAROP National Advocacy Working Group in our application, and I suspect if any of you are applying, I think participating in the Age with Rights campaign is a good example of your activities to move forward on the Convention on the Rights of Older Persons in terms of your activities at the UN, and I think they'd be interested in hearing about that kind of work. One of the questions was, how do you intend to contribute to the work of ECOSOC? Now, we committed to continue to work on the Sustainable Development Goals, the Commission on the Status of Women, where older people were virtually invisible and more or less still are, and also the work at the UN Human Rights Council. And we also participated at the UN Economic Commission for Europe, which is the regional office for Canada, our country. And we wrote about that in our application as well. In response to the question, has your organization participated at any UN conferences? Again, we had a good story to tell on work in both New York at the Open-Ended Working Group on Aging. So I'm hoping all of you will apply for that. It's open now. And at the General Assembly in regard to older persons being left out of the Sustainable Development Goals. Now, after applying in May 2020, we didn't hear anything from the UN until June 2021, when we received a couple of questions, mostly in regard to how our future activities would be related to the UN Open-Ended Working Group. It seemed to be the area they were focusing on when they asked us questions. And they asked us a couple of questions on finances, which had to do with the fact that at the beginning of our organization was affiliated with the university. So I just had to clarify some things there. It wasn't a big deal. And then after radio silence of a whole other year, we received a letter dated September 2022 that we had been granted that special consultative status at the UN, the one Sylvia mentioned in her presentation. Now, we were thrilled and have since then really worked to enhance our impact in regard to the rights of older persons at the United Nations. Notably, it was important, I think it's important, to increase your organization's impact at the UN, as it's necessary to have active presence in order to maintain your ECOSOC status. So once you get it, you really need to start using it. So here is a list of just some of the work we have done since getting our ECOSOC status to give you a sense of what we've done. First of all, we started working quite closely with the Canadian mission in Geneva on UN resolutions at the Human Rights Council on Older Persons, and Sylvia went through those in her presentation. And we hope to grow our influence by working with our mission to keep their feet to the fire on older persons' rights. I was asked by the Canadian delegation to the Commission on the Status of Women to be part of the delegation with the Minister for Women and Gender in 2022. And this led to an opportunity to work directly with Canadian diplomats in New York to add in references to older persons on the resolutions in that session. And that really has continued. They have continued to look at making sure that older persons' rights or older women's rights are included in those resolutions at the Commission for Status of Women. But again, you always have to be vigilant with your governments. I was also invited last summer to be on the ministerial delegation, Canadian ministers delegation, to the UN High-Level Political Forum, which has led to our organization working with the Canadian government to get older persons included in the Sustainable Development Goals. And once again, they were largely absent. So this has been a really positive step. And we're now seeking government support for work in Canada to include older persons in those anti-poverty provisions of the Sustainable Development Goals. Now, given that the future of the UN Open-Ended Working Group, or some version, may be gone after this year, I think it's really vital that UN NGOs and aging across the globe get ECOSOC status so that we can work together to ensure older persons aren't left behind at the United Nations. So I'm going to encourage all of you to move on that as soon as possible. And I'm encouraging all of you to please register for the Open-Ended Working Group UN meeting on aging this year, which is May 20th to 24th. And with that, I thank you, GAROP, for this important session and appreciate having this chance to tell you our story.
Thank you, Margaret. Also, we know that it's a short time to talk about all the opportunities that ECOSOC studies give you, but thank you for your examples because I think they're really useful. Now I'm going to give the floor to Sanju. Sanju has been contributing to the field of aging population for more than a decade. She serves as Chief Executive Officer of Aging Nepal for 5 years, and she's a steering member of GAROP since 2021, securing re-election in 2023. Her primary areas of expertise lie in research, training, and advocacy and campaigning. So, Sanju, you have the floor. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Belin. Thank you for introducing me. Okay, hello everyone. Greetings from Nepal. As Belin, she has already introduced me, but I'm Sanju Thapamagar, the Chief Executive Officer of Aging Nepal and the steering member of GAROP. I'm delighted to share our journey of obtaining ECOSOC consultative status, a significant achievement for Aging Nepal as the only organization dedicated to older people in Nepal with this status. The application process took approximately 4 years for us. In 2014, we got information about the status, and while we started filling out the application form, we were very near to the deadline. It was not easy for us because we were not well equipped with a good internet connection and not much experience in the submission process. We registered our profile on the site, but unfortunately, we could not complete the process that year. So we applied in 2016 again when it opened and submitted our application. After a few months, we got the mail that the request had been submitted to Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Nepal. Then we went there and had a meeting with concerned people for their approval. And in 2018, we received the exciting mail that Aging Nepal had been granted special consultative status. That was really a great moment for us. We even celebrated that day. In 2019, we were invited for an orientation webinar on ECOSOC consultative status that was held virtually. And we had a lot of information after that virtual session. As soon as we got the consultative status, we facilitated a government representative to participate in Open-Ended Working Group on Aging in 2018. Similarly, in 2019, we assisted older campaigners to attain Open-Ended Working Group on Aging, which was financially supported by GAROP. And one more important experience to share is, as we know, after getting the consultative status, we had to submit a quadrennial financial report, and Aging Nepal had to submit it in 2021. Somehow we missed it in 2021. So that time we were working from home due to the COVID, and many of us suffered from COVID, so we could not check the site and keep us updated. Fortunately, we got the final reminder mail in 2022, so we submitted the report promptly after that mail. Now I log in profile once a week and check the correspondence to keep myself updated to maintain the consultative status. Consultative status is a great matter of honor for us. We have been participating in different UN sessions virtually and in person, and also submitting statements during different occasions like OEWZ. Similarly, we have been participating in different surveys conducted by UN. Today also, I feel a survey that is only accessible to the organization with ECOSOC consultative status. The status helps to amplify our voices on national and international platform. So I urge all the participants who haven't applied for consultative status to do so, as it's not difficult like 10 years back when Aging Nepal applied. If your organization is legally updated and at least 2 years old, you can easily apply for it. Then you can take advantage of opportunity it opens up. You can find guidance, including videos and step-by-step process on the United Nations site. So thank you for listening to my experience, and I wish you all the best in obtaining the consultative status. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Sanji. We have some movement in the chat box, so thank you everybody for also posting so much questions. Regarding the first question that I think we want to ask to answer is, what is the difference between Open-Ended Working Group accreditation and ECOSOC accreditation? So Sylvia, and also one thing for all the people in the call, we are doing this webinar right now because the deadline of applying for ECOSOC status is the 1st of June. So it's true that it's is really close. So we have to start working on that. So I'm going to give the floor to Sylvia. Thank you.
Yes, accreditation for the open-ended working group gives you accreditation only for the open-ended working group. However, if you have ECOSOC status, you are accredited also to the open-ended working group and many more. So having ECOSOC status instantly or automatically gives you accreditation to the open-ended working group. You still need to register for it, but it's an administrative procedure of just registering. However, having accreditation to the open-ended working group is only for that, and for example, will not enable you to go to the Human Rights Council. And if the open-ended working group is in danger of closing down, then that accreditation will end with the closing down of the open-ended working group. So if you want to participate in other processes, you will need to apply for ECOSOC status. I hope it's clear.
Thank you. Also regarding the chat box, it's true that everybody has Sylvia post a link about who are the steps. So you have what are the basic steps that there was also a question regarding this in the chat box. Then I think that there is some organizations that they are having trouble because they don't have contact with ECOSOC. They applied but didn't have an answer. So they are asking what they can have the response or who they can contact regarding a specific question.
Maybe
Yes,
Margaret
Sylvia.
can answer that, but I just one question that there is always the NGO liaison office that for any question that you have regarding any issues regarding NGOs, that will be your contact. But Margaret or maybe Sanju, who had to wait 4 years, bless you.
There's a click when you go in, you go into the request where you sent in your information. You can click into that and see where you are, but mostly it just says, you know, awaiting decision. So as I said, the first year it was radio silence till they asked the questions, and then the second year was radio silence till they said, yeah, you've got it. So it's not exactly you know, streaming with information, but you know whether you're waiting or not.
Okay, actually, there's some confusion. We applied in 2014, but we could not complete the application process. That's why we stopped there due to the deadline. And after 2 years in 2016, we continued that application and we successfully, submitted the application process. So it's not 4 years; it's only 2 as usual. Sorry for the confusion.
Don't worry, Santi. Thank you so much. I think that regarding the questions for this issue, there are mostly issue that is also a question by Dorcas at the first, but is I think for Sylvia is when the resolution have been passed, how do we know that they are being implemented in different countries? Because the rest of the question in the chat box, I think that more or less have been, but maybe this is a question that you can write to us some answer, or if you want to have a really brief thing regarding this question.
Simply, first, you could monitor and bring that to the government, to the awareness of your government. But this is one of the things that Universal Periodic Review does. They monitor the implementation of human rights. And since we have the resolution on ageism and age discrimination, the group of friends on the rights of older persons have been asking standard questions to all member states who are reporting to the Council. How are you implementing the resolution on ageism and age discrimination? So that is an entry point. The Universal Periodic Review, when your country is reporting, to ensure that they report, and if they don't report on all the persons, it's your chance to bring the observation or to bring your shadow report to the Universal Periodic Review.
Thank you so much, Sylvia. Thank you for all the speakers. I think that for the moment we don't have any more questions in the chat box. So I know we are in a little bit of rush. So I'm going to launch you a poll regarding this session that we have. And I'm going to give you 1 minute to answer. Is regarding if you are interested in further webinars as this one. Well, you are answering to the poll. I'm going to thank so much to Ellen, to Sylvia, to Margaret, and to Sanjay that they have this amazing gift that they give to us regarding the presentation. So for the moment, a lot of people is voting. Moya is telling that she wants to find a buddy to go through the process with. So maybe someone can write to Moya, or Moya, you can put your email in the chat box, and maybe someone can try to know if they become your buddy in this process. That is an adventure for sure. We have 10 persons more to vote. Thank you, Moya. Okay. So I'm going to close the pool, and issue that you can see right now that there is like almost a consensus regarding that we are interested in further webinars. We are going to take note of that. So thank you so much for joining us to this webinar. And I think that I don't have anything more to add. So Ellen, I don't know if you want to say something to close it.
Only to say that we will follow up with the recording of the webinar, of course, and some further information and reminders about the process that you can all follow. But I hope it's been useful, and I really hope to be in Geneva with many of you one day in the future. Thank you for joining, and thank you to Belen for moderating as well.
Thank you so much, and goodbye. Have a great
Bye-bye.
night, afternoon, or
Thank
morning.
you.
Bye. Thank
Thank
you.
you,
Thank
everyone.
you.
Thank you
Thank
for
you, everyone.
participating. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.
Thanks, everyone.
Ciao.
Ciao.
Ciao. Ciao.